those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info. I'm so glad you could join us today. This is a program for caregivers and families to learn about caregiving when you're dealing with someone that has memory loss, dementia, Alzheimer's, different kind of things that you're not sure what's really going on. Maybe there's not even a name for it yet. This is for you. It's a way to educate, learn. We provide lots of great, wise information. And whether you're listening to us on the local radio, 1470 AM here in South Florida, or you're watching us on caregiversolutions.info on your website, we appreciate you being here. Today is Tuesday, December 29th, and I want to say happy holidays to everyone. We have an exciting program for you because it actually focuses on families getting together for the holidays, how to spot some perhaps telltale signs when you're gathering together for the holidays and you haven't seen some relatives in a long time, and there are ways to spot some signs of early dementia. We're going to be talking about that. But first, we're going to have our brain boosters. Now, brain booster is something that we share every week for you to improve your memory, to help us retain the memory we have, to keep us going, to keep us functioning in the most positive way. And so this week, I want to talk about what we call a brain break and focused attention practices. Now, what is a brain break? Brain break sounds like taking a break from your brain activity. And in a way, it kind of is. It's a distraction, especially for people that are very focused. They have perhaps a job that's very tedious. They do the same things over and over again. And sometimes it just becomes so monotonous that they just need a break from that, because that type of work can cause a lot of stress. Caregivers sometimes do the same things day in and day out. If you're an adult child and you're caring for someone with dementia, your parent, a grandparent, perhaps you're even a student in high school or college, and you're a caregiver and you're trying to focus on your studies and it's really, really hard and you need a brain break. So what exactly is a brain break? Well, it is a short period of time when we change up the dull routine of the incoming information that arrives via predictable, tedious, and well-worn roadways. Things our brains are used to doing day in and day out. But our brains are actually wired for new things. They're wired for novelty, because those are the things that we actually pay attention to the most. Anything that's novel, any new stimulus that comes into our environment, it actually feels threatening to our brain because it's out of the ordinary. Now, That's always been a good thing in the history of man, because it works to our advantage. Because when something is out of the ordinary or it's novel, it could have signaled danger, and that's how our species has survived from the beginning, because our brain is wired to pay attention to these things that are not ordinary. And so what we want to do when we take a brain break, it is something that we refocus our brain on. We actually refresh our thinking. It helps us discover sometimes a new solution to an old problem, a new solution to a problem that just you get stuck in a rut, doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so by changing our focus and taking a brain break, we can sometimes look at things in a whole different perspective, through a different lens. And then this helps us to look at things with fresh eyes and a fresh brain. So what are some of the things you can do? Little things you can do in the office, you can do at home. If you're in an office and you have a whiteboard, for instance, a simple little thing to do is take a marker and make a little squiggle line on it, anything that you want. Then use your non-dominant hand and use the marker to create something out of that squiggle line. Make a picture using your non-dominant hand. So this is going to focus attention on the non-dominant hand to be creative. It's going to work your brain in a different way. And these are only little 5-minute exercises that you can do at your office, at your desk, and without a partner. There's also things that you can do with a partner, and those are fun too. You can bat some things around. You can actually draw pictures in the air with your fingers, have a partner, and it's almost like a pantomime, but let them try to guess what it is that you're making. And it can be simple, it can be elaborate, but you're both focused on something that's abstract, trying to make something concrete. And that's going to be working your brain, forging those new pathways to create something that's new, and it just might enlighten you to like have that aha moment. Now, there are things called focused attention practices also, and these focused attention practices help to reduce our heart rate, which is going to help reduce our stress. And some of the things that we can do for that, obviously, is the breathing exercises. We talked about that many weeks ago with our yoga instructor and breathing. But you can use your brain to use your breathing together in a kind of a different way. For instance, if we're going to be taking some breaths in, let's visualize some colors. Let's make our life a little colorful. And maybe we're going to focus on breathing in the beautiful, fresh blue sky. And so we're going to take a deep breath in and relish that and hold it for a few seconds. And then we're going to let it go. And when you let it go, sometimes you want to let go a different color. For instance, if you've been very frustrated and you're angry maybe about something, maybe a color you want to let go is red. Red kind of represents anger. And when you breathe in the blue and let go with the red, your brain is focusing on doing these activities that are going to make you calmer and feel better overall. Another one is what they call the deep dive breath, and that's where you're going to inhale, hold it for 4 counts, and then you're going to exhale slowly for 4 counts. And you continue to do that. It's a very simple exercise. It's just breathing in, holding it, breathing out. It'll keep your body calmer. It actually clears your head. So you can try these different exercises. They bring different attention to our thoughts, our feelings, and our choices. So whether you're at home, whether you're at work, whether you're in a classroom, try these simple exercises and see if it works for you. If you're interested in finding out more about brain breaks and some of the other techniques that you can use, you can actually go to the website www.edutopia.org, and you can find out more about brain breaks and try it for yourself. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about how families get together, and sometimes it's not always merry during the holidays. So we'll be right back. Stay with us. So thank you for joining our show today, Caregiver Solutions Info. We are in the midst of the holidays. December is full of holidays. We've gone through Hanukkah. We've just finished Christmas celebrations, and we're looking for next week into the new year. And this is a time when families get together and everyone wants to have fun and create memories, and maybe we haven't seen each other for a very long time, and the holidays certainly help to bring us all together. And you would hope that it would be all merry and joyful, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes we find that we haven't seen our relatives or our good friends for many months or even years, and things just seem off. Things aren't the same. Maybe you can't put your finger on it, but you're not sure what it is. But we're going to talk about today how to watch for subtle signs that can actually show you some early dementia may be happening in a friend or a relative. And we have someone that's joining us via telephone today, and her name is Pam, and she has a unique situation because not only does Pam work in the healthcare field with seniors, unfortunately she has elderly parents and they have challenges of their own. So she's joined us today via telephone to share with us her experiences, and we're going to talk about some of these signs. So Pam, are you there with us?
I am. How are you, Marcia?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. So, Pam, share with us briefly your home situation, because I know that you're a caregiver for parents, but you also work. What's your scenario like?
Well, I am a caregiver. My dad has Alzheimer's. And my mom, unfortunately, was recently, this past year, diagnosed with Parkinson's. So it's a difficult situation between both of them. I'm in the healthcare field providing some non-medical type of services to people to help them live independently at home. And it was interesting because my dad, was really brilliant. I mean, he was a metallurgical engineer, traveled the world.
Wow.
So you wouldn't have anticipated him getting this type of disease. So you never know what it's going to bring.
Right. Does it ever run in your family, or is this just kind of a shock out of the blue?
Well, we're not aware that it runs in the family. Most of the people, many of my relatives lived into their 90s, and even one aunt lived to 100, never experienced this. My father's relatives, all the male relatives, all died early on with heart disease. So it's kind of hard to tell. But I remember him early on. He started making the comment that, "Oh, I'm so stupid," in talking about different things. And we kept saying, "Oh, you're not stupid, Dad,"
Because he was a brilliant man, and he was confident in that, correct?
Yep, and he used to fix everything, and all of a sudden, just little things like he couldn't, the light would be out, and he wouldn't know how to do it. He'd take apart the whole electrical socket.
Just to change a light bulb.
That the light bulb was burnt out. So, I mean, there were little things that we started noticing.
And how long has your father been diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
He's actually been diagnosed about 10 years ago now.
Okay.
Around when he was 75.
Okay, and your mom was the caregiver at that time.
Yep.
And unfortunately now you just said that she was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's.
That's correct.
So with her Parkinson's, not only, is it a physical condition that causes challenges, but Parkinson's disease can also cause confusion, mild cognitive impairment, and sometimes dementia. So have you noticed any memory problems in your mom since she's been diagnosed with Parkinson's?
Yes. One of the things she started saying, and mostly it's in the evening, but she said she wanted to go home, that she wasn't at home.
And they live in their own home?
They live in their own home for about 10 years now. And we have, because of their situation, we have aides around the clock. And she felt that she was at the caregiver's home that was helping her instead of them coming there.
So she didn't recognize her own surroundings.
Nope.
Wow. And how did you relay to her that she was home?
We just talked a lot about, we got them a kitten about a year ago. And I said, well, Cappy is the kitten's name. And they absolutely adore her, and it keeps them happy and occupied all day. And I said, is Cappy there at the house? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, Cappy lives in your house. And we would talk about his dad here and some different situations and things in the house. And she realized, yes, she was home, but she just, she would say that she's just so confused. She doesn't understand.
Right,
and usually she would realize, yes, she's home, but it would take about probably 20 to 30 minutes of talking about different things.
Right, and so you were sharing with her some familiar objects, some familiar surroundings, some things that perhaps would trigger a memory to let her know that she was in her own home, and that was a very good thing to do. And also with the cat, because pet therapy is wonderful for people with dementia.
It was one of the best things we did.
Wow.
Really.
Well,
yeah,
and
it entertains both of them.
Right, entertains them, gives them, a focus to love and watch and talk about. That's a really good idea, actually.
The cat is really good. She's so affectionate with both of them. She'll go and sit on one of their laps, and then a little while later she'll sit on the other one's lap. She'll lay in bed with them. She's really, really a good cat.
Well, they say that animals have this certain sense that they connect a lot with people that are, not well, that are either handicapped or, have some cognitive issues. They kind of know instinctively that this person is different and special, and so they really gravitate toward that. There's a lot of great stories out there about animals and the caregivers that have them.
Yeah, I truly believe that.
That's awesome. So your job entails working with a lot of seniors, so you have a full-time job, but I understand you're very involved as a caregiver for your elderly parents. And how much time do you have to take away from work, or how much time do you have to take away from your personal time to oversee their care?
Well, I would say probably 75 to 80% of my personal time is gone.
Wow, so that leaves very little.
For them, right? Because I really am not able to take away that much from my work time. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot left. So I stop by there after work every day. Sometimes in the morning beforehand, I'm on the phone, handling financial, doctor's appointments, whatever needs to be done.
You're still the go-to person, even though you mentioned that your parents have help in the home 24/7, 24 hours a day. It's your responsibility to do those types of things, to make those doctor's appointments, oversee the caregiver, make sure they're doing what they need to do for your parents. And,
exactly.
and handle everything else that you do, for work. And I know you have a busy job, and you're always running and doing, and so it is difficult, and I so appreciate you taking the time to share, because you're not alone as far as an adult child working full-time and taking care of parents, and sometimes, we forget that, we need to take care of ourselves too. And so I'm hoping that, you do that and find a little bit of respite, and maybe we can share with others, some of the ways that you do that. But what I want to talk about today are some of the early signs of dementia, because a lot of families are coming into town, gathering around the dinner table, visiting, and things may not be as they should. And I've actually experienced that this week, because families have just shown up at our door A son recently came to see me with his mom. The son was from New York and the grandson was from Chicago, and they were visiting, and they had visited mom and dad. And mom is the caregiver for her husband and for the gentleman's father. And I think that he was very shocked to learn when he came down in person how tough things really were. I don't think that over the phone, having the conversation, that you get the true feeling and the truth as far as how the stress levels are being handled, how appointments are being taken care of, especially when a caregiver will say, I'm fine, everything's fine. But, when you're there and you watch and you're looking around and seeing how the household is running or not, you really can get a better grasp on what's going on. And I know you see this every day in your work too, right?
Yes, I do. And it's interesting because I see it in my parents. I remember my mother saying, oh, everything's fine, I can handle it. I tried to get her to get some help early on, and she didn't want to do it. They don't want to admit that they might need a little help.
Mm-hmm.
And they think they're, super person.
Right. Sometimes they even want to be a martyr, that I can do it all, and no one can do it any better than I can, and I don't need that help. And it's sad because they don't want to take advantage of help that's available, or they get really stubborn about it. And now, unfortunately, your hand was forced because of your mother's new diagnosis. So you do have that help. But one of the signs that families can notice is that when you're asked, let's say Aunt Betty, you ask Aunt Betty, oh, hi, Aunt Betty, we're coming over for dinner. What time did you want us to come? And Aunt Betty might give different family members different times. And if she's telling you to come at 4 and she's telling someone else 2 and somebody else 6, no one really knows that until they all show up at different times. Well, Aunt Betty said this to me, but this to me. And so Aunt Betty is forgetting, what her plans are. And this is obviously a problem. And the family needs to discuss this and talk about it, because if you're not getting the right answers, or you're getting vague answers, whenever, or, just nothing specific, you will find that these are pat answers for things. And maybe you experienced that early on too, when your mother was first taking care of your dad, when your dad would have some of these vague answers. She probably covered up for him, actually, sometimes. Did you ever come across where maybe dad didn't know something and mom covered up for him and said the answer?
Yeah, I remember somebody asking my dad where they lived, to come over to their house to do something. And my dad's comment was, well, I live at home.
Good answer, but not real specific.
He loves to joke, so he would always turn these things into a joke without really answering the question.
Right, and that is one of the ways that people do cover up, because they make it humorous. And everybody, loves a clown, and it's funny. Mm-hmm. But you're still not getting the information that you require. And you have to be careful about these cover-up, because people that aren't versed in watching specifically for signs of memory loss and onset dementia, they're going to think that these are just having fun comments, or maybe they take face value what the person says and they think it's true. But in reality, it's all made up. I remember a gentleman who a while ago lived for many years at my community at Arden Courts, and his son used to come and visit him and take him out for lunch once in a while. And so this one particular day, the gentleman was all dressed up, dapper, with his jacket and a nice little cap. And I said, hi, Lou. I said, wow, you look great. Did you go out to lunch today with your son? And he says, I sure did. So I said, well, where did you go? And he said, we went to that little joint down the road, that little burger joint down the road. And I said, wow, that must have been fun. I said, well, what did you have to eat? And he said, hamburger and french fries. And I said, was it good? He says, it was delicious. Now, anybody would have believed what he said. However, one of our caregivers was standing right behind him in the dining room and shaking her head no the whole time that we had this conversation, letting me know that no, that wasn't true, but who would not have believed him? He was convinced that that's what happened, and he was very adamant about it. And so we know the truth, but nobody else would, and this is what covering up is. And so we want people to be aware of that and watch for that, because it can fool you many times.
Yeah, it fooled me at the beginning.
Yeah, it fooled you at the beginning even, and you're the family and you're the daughter, but it does happen. So we want people to be aware of that. One of the other signs that we can look for is very subtle, and when we want to spot some dementia, is deflection. Now, deflection is a little bit about like what your dad said so he was asked about, where do you live? And he said, well, I live at home. That's very similar, but a deflection is sometimes not even answering the question, and it might be throwing the question back to the inquirer. So, for instance, if someone would say to your dad, so what do you think about that baseball team? Well, Dad might be confused and doesn't really know what's going on with the baseball team, can't remember, maybe might even be a little bit embarrassed to say something for fear that he would say something wrong. So instead of trying to cover up and say something made up, he might just say, well, I don't know yet. What do you think? So he's going to deflect the question and put it back on the person asking the question originally. Has your dad ever done that?
I don't remember him doing that. He actually would just say, I don't remember.
Uh-huh.
Or make the comment that he couldn't remember. Like if I asked him, he loves golf.
Okay.
So a lot of times we watch the golf on TV, or we'll talk a little bit about the golf, and, I'll ask him, oh, gee, who won that tournament? And it was just on, but he won't remember.
Right.
And he doesn't try to deflect, but he just says, I don't remember.
Okay. All right. Well, a lot of us say we don't remember. I don't remember everything either. So, that's a good answer. If you don't remember, you don't remember. But that's a good answer. But deflection is something that we also want to be aware of. What do you think? Or a lot of times if you have a situation where you have a husband and wife together and the one is asked the question and they don't know how to answer it, what do they sometimes do? They turn to the well spouse and they say, you tell them, or you answer that, or Martha, you know, and they look to someone else to give them the answer, and it's usually the spouse or their partner, someone that they're close to that lived with them, because they don't want to give that bad information or that incorrect information. So deflection can happen in several different ways. One of the things when we're talking about speaking is word finding difficulty, and this is very common in the early stages of dementia, where the person is trying to remember someone's name. Now, we all forget that. Everybody's forgotten somebody's name, but we usually don't forget the name of an object. These are my glasses. This is my mug. This is my necklace, right? But when people have problems word finding and they're trying to describe a familiar object or talk about it to someone and they can't think of a simple word that they have always known, they might make up a word for it, or they might substitute something for that, like that thingamajig or that whatchamacallit. Your mom is...
You know what I mean.
You know what I mean. Yeah, you know what I mean. Exactly. Now, your mom being confused, you mentioned she has become very confused since she's had the Parkinson's. Does she have any trouble with that word-finding issue?
Yeah, and actually probably a year or more before she was diagnosed, every now and then she had a great difficulty. Every now and then she'd be describing something, and she would end up not being able to tell the word. It would just be blank.
It just
And
didn't
she'd try
come
to
out.
explain
Just,
around it,
uh-huh.
but, or she'd just stop and try to remember it and then try to, explain it, or she just got frustrated and stopped altogether sometimes.
So that happened at least a year before she was officially diagnosed. So right there was your telltale sign. I'm sure you obviously, were aware of that, but that's classic where, you can't think of a word, and a lot of us have it on the tip of our tongue. And the difference is when it's on your tip of your tongue, you can eventually recall it if we think about it hard enough or long enough. But if we can't recall it and it never comes to us, then that is definitely a sign. And obviously that you noticed that in your mom. And have you noticed that it's becoming more so where she's having more difficulty with words?
No, more confusion now than difficulty with words.
What does she get confused about?
Just where she is.
Okay. More of her orientation to place.
Yeah, and it's hard to say if it's a combination of the medications she's on, because she's on a bunch of medications, along with sleeping pills, which never help, and the Parkinson's and the progression of that. So, it's a combination of many things, I think.
Yeah, you're right. We have to look at the big picture. It's not one thing. It's not a black and white. We have to look at all aspects of someone's being, from their environment to their medication to their their exercise, their food, the stimulation that they get. There's so much involved. So that's why it's important that we are talking about this, because one thing doesn't necessarily mean that someone has early dementia, but you put together several of these clues, then it might be a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. We're going to take a short break. We have more tips to go over about how to spot dementia at family gatherings, and so stay with us and we'll be right back. And we are back at Caregiver Solutions Info. We're talking today about how to spot dementia at family gatherings when you're gathering for the holidays. And we have all the holidays that have just passed and the ones coming up for New Year's. Families are gathering, friends are gathering, and we're talking about how to spot some dementia that might be going on, especially if you haven't been around certain people for a while and things aren't quite right. So we have Pam on the telephone, and she's been sharing with us her experiences, and we're talking about her parents. Both of them have some at least mild cognitive impairment. Cognitive impairment can be caused by Parkinson's. Mild cognitive impairment is a precursor to dementia, and unfortunately her dad has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Thank you again, Pam, for being here and sharing with us.
You're welcome.
We want to talk about misplacing things. Now, this is another tip. So when people are home for the holidays and things are being prepared for celebrations, or maybe bringing out special objects that are traditional objects that we have around the holidays, but sometimes things aren't where they're supposed to be and they're misplaced, especially maybe in the kitchen. If things are always in the same place and you've been going to your parents' house and helping prepare meals for the holidays, and you know exactly where she's kept the measuring cup for 35 years, and all of a sudden, where did it go? And it's missing, and you look high and low, and you might find it in an odd place. Maybe you find it sitting by itself in the freezer. You might find it on a shelf in the living room for no apparent reason. So misplacing things is very common with people that are in the beginning stages of dementia. So what about misplacing things in your house, your parents' household, Pam? Any examples that you could share about that?
Well, and actually we have never recovered a couple items of my dad's.
Oh, my.
He lost a pair of glasses, and where they ended up, maybe it was in the trash, I don't know, but we never did find them. And he misplaced his dentures as well.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You never found them?
Nope.
So sometimes, people say, how can you lose your teeth? How can you lose this? But again, it's it's not uncommon for folks that have dementia to take out their dentures and wad them up in a tissue because, maybe they're going to be going to bed and they're used to taking them out to sleep and maybe have them clean. But because they're forgetting some of their routines, they're taking the dentures out, wadding them up in a tissue and throwing them in the trash. And then the trash goes out, and unless you're actually looking through every little piece of that trash, you might not find those dentures. And that's a big loss, and it's expensive, too.
Yes, and I think that's what happened.
You think that's what he did?
Yeah, and I actually have another example from one of my very first early on clients almost 20 years ago. The son suspected she had some dementia, so we tried to get an aide to work with her, and she felt the aides were stealing from her.
Ah, a little paranoia going on there.
A little paranoia, yes. And I actually went over to be with her one day because the aide wasn't able to get in, and she wanted me to sit with her because she trusted me. And she had asked me when I was ready to leave to take out the garbage. Well, in one of the bags was her coffee pot.
The whole coffee pot?
The whole coffee pot.
Well, maybe it was broken. Did it break?
No, it worked fine. And I put it back in a cabinet in her house, and it was funny, a day or two later, she said somebody stole her coffee pot. So I went over and showed her where it was and put it back where she wanted it. But little things like that, they don't remember.
She didn't remember throwing it out, maybe,
No.
For whatever reason, and then someone stole it from her.
And we don't know why she put it in the garbage, but she did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So not only do they misplace things that perhaps could never be found, but they also throw things away. And that could be a big problem with people with early dementia, that you don't realize they have this problem because they're going to be throwing away possibly some very important documents. They could be throwing away personal possessions that have either high monetary value or even high sentimental value. And those things can sometimes never be replaced. Mm-hmm. So we do want to watch out for misplacing things and trying to keep organized, maybe even, watching the trash. And it's very hard. I mean, it's almost like you have to be there, like, watching all the time because these things can happen and you never know when they can happen. And that's the hard part about it.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about is multiple written notes. Now, a lot of people, especially when they have early dementia and they're confused, and they understand that they're confused. A lot of people say, oh my gosh, I'm just so confused, I can't remember anything, and I'm going to write everything down. So they're writing notes, and we all use Post-it notes. I mean, it was the greatest invention, right? And we all use those Post-it notes, and we put them on things to remind us. But people with dementia sometimes will write multiple notes of the same exact thing because they have forgotten that they already wrote themselves the note. Now, anything about that is familiar in your family, Pam?
No, I didn't really find much of that. My mom was a teacher. She was pretty well organized and wrote everything down on her calendar. So she had one place that she always wrote everything. My dad would say, though, we were watching TV one day, and they were showing all these new, like, limbs and things, and even things that were being created by a 3D printer.
Right.
And he made the comment, well, gee, maybe they can create me a new brain.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Anyways, he knew there was a problem but didn't understand what it was.
Exactly. And that's a scary time for people when they're at the stage of the dementia where they're aware of losing their abilities, and it's scary. And it actually can create fear in them, and they don't know what to do about it. Sometimes they're so private that they don't even want to share with other people their feelings that I'm losing my memory or I can't remember, and they keep it all inside. And what happens is they become very, very afraid, and this causes what I call the fear factor. And when people get really afraid and they have this conflict within them and they're losing their abilities, when people are afraid, what do we usually do? We either run from something or we fight against it. So it's that fight or flight syndrome. And when this internal conflict is happening within someone who is having the cognitive problems, a lot of that fear comes out sideways as anger. So you'll find in some cases people that are in the early stages, they become very angry about things, and it might be really out of character for them. But what's happening is that fear is coming out as sideways. So you have to look for those kind of little signs too.
Yeah, my father sometimes gets angry, or he gets very frustrated.
Right, he's getting frustrated because of losing his abilities, and that's normal. You know, we would all be frustrated if we felt we weren't up to par. But since your mother was a school teacher, I have to share with you, we had a resident at Arden Courts who also was a school teacher, and she wrote down everything. She had the Post-it notes, and her whole room was Post-it notes. I mean, we probably could have made it into wallpaper. And, you know, every day she would write every single thing down. She wanted to write down the menu, what she was going to have for breakfast the next day, for lunch and dinner, and she wrote everything down. She didn't want to forget a thing. And I remember that her daughter, who was also a school teacher, would come and visit, and they were very close. And the daughter, you know, really wanted to help mom and try to get her to be an A student, right? Because they were both coming from the school system, and you want to be a good teacher, but you also want to be a good student. And they were going to the neurologist's office for a checkup. And so the daughter, being a school teacher also, was prepping mom for the visit to the neurologist. And so she knew the questions that the neurologist was going to be asking. What day is it? Who's the president? What's the year? Draw a clock, you know, with a time, those kinds of things. So they had been practicing and practicing. So the day came, and she went off to the doctor's office, and when the daughter came back, she had to share this with me, and I thought it was so adorable. They got to the question. The doctor said to the mother, so can you tell me, I think her name was Adele, she says, can you tell me, Adele, who's the president? And Adele said, oh, I know this one. I know this one. And she wanted to get the right answer, being, you know, the school teacher with the right answer. And she says, I remember, it's Omaha. And I thought, that was so cute, because Obama, which president at the time, Omaha and Obama, I mean, you know, it's very close. But she didn't quite make it, but she did really well, I think, on the rest of the test. But I just thought that was very cute, because the president being Obama, you know, she thought it was Omaha, and, you know, that was a cute little story. So sometimes we have to see the humor in things. And, you know, of course, the daughter, you know, thought it was also cute that she had to share with us. So we do have to see the lighter side, because people with cognitive disabilities and having the dementia, having Alzheimer's, they're not always going to say the right thing. They're not always going to have the right answer. And there are going to be times when they might even be very inappropriate. So, you know, this does cause them frustration. We have to be, you know, patient about that and not judge them. And we have to keep our sense of humor and laugh it off with them. And it makes life a lot easier for everybody.
Yeah, and not argue back or try to correct them too much.
Exactly. So another telltale sign that we want to watch out for, this one's called uncharacteristic reliance on a spouse or other loved one. We touched on this a little bit before, where all of a sudden a very independent person is cognitively impaired with Alzheimer's or other dementia, and they're looking for reliance on their spouse or someone they live with, maybe a caregiver, to give the right answer. We talked about this before. Somebody else needs to help them fill in the blanks. They might start a story, but maybe they can't finish the story. So they're going to look to somebody else to do that. So, that is also a sign. One thing that I wanted to share, this one happened to somebody that I know, is an error in making traditional food. And if someone's making a pie and it calls for a cup of sugar, this particular person made it with a cup of salt, and nobody knew. It was a beautiful pie. It came out of the oven great, but as soon as someone took a bite of it, guess what? Everybody knew there's something wrong. And it's very easy to confuse sugar and salt if you have confusion and memory loss. So that's something else that you want to watch out for. If that happens in your family, there's a telltale sign. Unusual irritation and frustration is one, and also repeating questions over and over and over again. Your dad, is he repetitive with questions?
Not so much anymore. He was a lot at the beginning, and I learned that if I would try to bring up a question and get him to talk about something in the past, to deflect those constant questions, because they get focused on one thing and just keep asking about it.
Right. So at that point, you can kind of get his attention onto something else. But that is another telltale sign, is repeating the same question over and over again. So if you are experiencing any of these telltale signs, you see this in a loved one, what do you want to do about it? You want to sit down with the family, have a conversation, make sure you get the loved one to a doctor. You want to get a proper diagnosis, see what's going on. It might not be much of anything at all, but certainly it could be, and the important thing is to catch it early, get to a neurologist, get to your primary care, get all the tests and figure out what's going on, because the sooner you know, the more you're able to take care of that problem. Pam, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I love talking with you and your experiences and sharing them. I'm sure were something that other people could relate to with your parents, and I want to, wish you all the best wishes for the upcoming new year and taking care of your parents and all that you have on your plate. I think you're doing a remarkable job.
Thank you so much, Marcia, and I wish the same for you as well.
Thank you, Pam. Great. So I want to thank our national sponsor, Arden Court's Memory Care Community, for making this program possible, as well as our other sponsors. Please call them if you need help, because they are professionals in their field. They will help you, they will guide you, and that's why we have partnered with them to be experts to help you, the caregiver. And if you need anything, you can call the toll-free number of Arden Courts, which is the 888-478-2410, and let them know that you heard about Arden Courts on the Caregiver Solution Program. Again, 888-478-2410. They're giving away a free book called The 36-Hour Day, the 5th edition. This is the brand new one, just came out. It's totally free. All you have to do is call and ask for it. Tell them you heard about it on the program. They'll be happy to send it off to you. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. It's been a pleasure being with you, sharing with you. Tune in next week, same time, same place. And in the meantime, don't forget, give somebody a hug. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.
The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its